Yeah, my job is very unique. I work at Pixar Animation Studio, so I'm actually not at Disney. I'm at Pixar. We're up in the Bay Area. And my job is basically to protect cars and to be a creative advisor for any cars-related project. So we're talking about theme parks, video games, publishing, consumer products, which is toys, and then I'm also the authenticity guy for the film. So John will consult with me, John Lasseter, my boss, will consult with me and say, hey, did we get that detail right for the movie? So, and part of it too is relationships with automotive manufacturers. So I go to all the shows, all the events, and kind of keep all those relationships going too. I've been working at Pixar since first started on Monsters Inc. in the art department, but I started as a PA, the entry-level position. I worked my way up over the years. I was the guy who used to like sharpen the pencils and go get art supplies and do photographs for the art department, and then I worked my way up. And then this job started, I was managing the art department on Brave. So this must have been 2009, 2010, and John came to me and he said, we were starting on Cars 2, and he said, hey, I want you on Cars 2. And I said, all right, you know. And he said, but I really want you to Cars has gotten so big that I want you to sort of oversee all this stuff's going on by these people who didn't work on the movie, and you know it better than anybody. And I said, well, John, I can't do all that stuff and manage the art department. It's kind of two different jobs. And he said, well, just write a job description of what it would be to watch over Cars full time. We'll just make it your job. And I said, all right. And I wrote the whole job description out. And I remember at that time, the studio was like, I don't know, this is a full-time job. Can you manage the department and do this part-time? But John was asking for me to do it. And I said, I'll try. And it was evident right away that it was a full-time job and then some. Cars Land took me, that was 5 years. There's an Art of Animation resort in Florida. That was 2 or 3 years. So many Cars projects. And then this, I mean, this is the kind of cool stuff I get to work on now. So on the film Cars, I started out as a coordinator in the art department, which is kind of one notch up from a PA. And I became the manager for the character team. So when they built the characters in the computer, I was the manager. So I was overseeing the characters getting built. And I go, no, that's not right. Actually, that car has this kind of bolt pattern. No, actually, that car had parallel leaf suspension. And John was like, oh, you actually know about cars. And so during the film, he began to sort of ask me if things were accurate or not. And he'd say, hey, what should we use for this? Like Doc Hudson, when he turns into his dirt track version, those tires that had those cool pattern in it, it's sort of like diamond cut pattern, which the old Firestone dirt tires had. I was like, we have to use these, John. These are the most cool tires. And he's like, all right. Bias ply versus radial, all that kind of stuff. John would keep going back to me and saying, is this accurate? Is this right? And so I just sort of became a consultant for him for car stuff. And he's a real car guy too. Yeah. Yeah, so the Petersen, I have a relationship going back to them, back to when we were working on the first cars. We came here for a Hot Wheels Hall of Fame event where Richard Petty was getting inducted, and he was the king in cars. So we came just to support him, and we started meeting people at the museum. Relationship picked up from there, and then about 2.5 years ago, they said, hey, we're going to redo the Petersen, total redo. And we want Pixar in there. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do? And they said, well, we don't know, we just want cars in there. And they were thinking more like a children's area, and I said, no. I said, I really want this to be a whole family experience. My goal is that mom or dad or son or daughter, regardless of age, can learn something about how a car works. Because you've got a generation of kids now, younger kids now, some of them don't care about cars at all. They don't know how they work, and they don't care. They'd rather have a laptop than a car. And to me, if there's one more kid that walks out here and they're like, I'm gonna build my own car, that's a win. I just want to see another generation of kids like myself that come up that love cars. Like you loved cars when you were a kid, right? It doesn't just start one day, you're into it. And every kid who walks through this door, they're gonna learn something about cars. You cannot walk away and go like, I didn't learn anything. It's everywhere. And it works if you're 3 years old or 13 years old or 30 years old, you're gonna learn something at a different level. And that's what I was very excited about with this space. It's a really, really good question. It's something, I mean, I've definitely noticed for years. One thing I'm pretty excited about, when the film Cars came out in 2006, it definitely invigorated some kids to care about cars. I mean, I had people coming up to me that said, my grandson wants to take a ride in my old truck now because of the film Cars. I had people on Route 66 go, we were going to close up our shop, and now we got people coming around with their kids wanting to know more about Route 66. So Cars the film was like, in some way, a small catalyst to kind of get passionate about the automobile going again. And now having that in the Petersen, I hope that it keeps paying it forward. And I think, you know, people are going to engage at different levels. We live in a much more digital age now where people can just sort of have a personal device. They don't have to physically interact with things as much. What I love about this exhibit at the Petersen is it's a physical experience. I can go in and push that button and watch the suspension go up and down on a car. And kids can kind of make a mental connection of how a car's working where they never thought about it before. That's pretty cool. That would be, that's a good question. It's an employee car show with the manufacturers. You'd have to work for one of the manufacturers to get in there or jump the fence. I started that show. And it's funny, it started as just an employee car show. We just had employee cars. It was just our own personal car show, and it wasn't a big event. And then when we were working on the film Cars, I started to get to know manufacturers because we were using real cars in the film. And so Ford and GM was like, hey, do you want us to bring something to your car show? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool. And GM one year was like, well, what do you want? I'm like, can you bring a real Motorama car? And they're like, sure. And I mean, we're talking like, putting a car on a climate-controlled transporter and bringing it to California to display it for a private car show. No public's not allowed. We don't charge anything because it's only for employees. It's a barbecue lunch for our employees. Ford brought the first GT. I had the first Carrera GT from Porsche. I mean, whatever we asked for, they would just, yeah, sure, we'll bring it. This year I had the new Mustang GT350. I had one of the first ones there. I had the first 991 GT3 in the US, a Euro spec car at my show. Bugatti Veyron. I mean, we've had everything just because the manufacturer's like, sure, we'll bring it. What do you want? It's pretty crazy. And it just kind of grew. And now it does the same thing this space is going to do because Pixar employees they're not all car people. They go to that barbecue lunch and they walk away and they engage at a different level. People go, I kind of like old cars. Or they're like, wow, I never realized I really like a GTR. Cool. So it creates a passion in somebody that didn't know they had it.